Hello and welcome to Colonial Outcast. We are currently 90 seconds from midnight and the apocalypse. And we're going to talk about what the Doomsday Clock here is in a second. But before we get started, I have really bad video today, in case you're watching the video, because I'm cat sitting from a place that has crappy internet. And I think we'll start by showcasing, Bandit. He's the best boy before we talk about nuclear war. And then we've got Daisy over here just chilling on the windowsill. So, okay, now that that's over with and you have your little dopamine cat video hit, what is the Doomsday Clock? Well, the Doomsday Clock is a design that warns the public about how close we are to destroying our world with dangerous technologies of our own making. It also includes climate change now. It's a metaphor, a reminder of the perils we must address if we are to survive on this planet. When the Doomsday Clock was created in 1947, the greatest danger to humanity came from nuclear weapons, in particular from the prospect of the United States and the Soviet Union, now Russia, were headed in a nuclear arms race. The bulletin considered possible catastrophic disruptions from climate change again in its hand-settling deliberations for the first time in 2007. Well, they updated the clock to 90 seconds to midnight, which is, I think, the closest it's ever been. Someone can fact check me in the comments. I think it may have been 60 seconds or like 30 seconds during like the Cuban Missile Crisis. But yeah, we're at 90 seconds, and I'm sure it's actually closer to 90 seconds now because Israel's about to, if rumors are true, target Iranian nuclear facilities. And we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to be doing a couple news updates first before we get into it. And I just want everybody to know that as of 40 minutes ago, Iran has cleared its airspace and shut down flights throughout the country. And that's exactly what they did shortly before they sent the missile attack to Israel last Tuesday. So something's going down. We know the general of the chief of CENTCOM, United States Central Command, has landed in Tel Aviv. There's word that that the United States is going to plan in tandem the response to Iran, which is a huge step. And this is one, if true, is one we haven't taken yet because, we've only ran intercepts thus far for Israel. We being the United States. I'm not trying to connect myself or Travis, who's on the podcast today, or Mark, who's also on the podcast today, to U.S. foreign policy in any way. But I was just saying we, as the United States, and we wanted to stay out of it. But now I think there's a policy shift. So first of all, welcome, guys. Thanks for coming on a Sunday. This is going to be more kind of like a free-form, chill conversation. It's probably only going to go 45 minutes because we want to get this posted before the world explodes. So thanks for coming on.
Glad to be here.
All right. So it's October. What's up?
Good to see Trav again and Daisy back there. I'm curious about her opinion, what she thinks about all this.
Well, she's on a lot of like gabapentin that the vet gave because she's like a billion years old and like living hurts. So she's just chilling. Okay. So first of all, it's October 6th. It's about to be October 7th. And I found like there's been global protests, and I found some video from Travis's usual stomping ground, Rabat, just to demonstrate the global coordination of, the anniversary of October 7th. And if you're American who's bad at geography, Rabat is in Morocco. So real quick, we're going to be talking about Arab governments in this episode as well. Are you surprised that there's been that there's such a large action in Rabat, Travis?
No. I think especially an externally focused one. Yeah, I mean that's one of the largest things I've ever witnessed. News or otherwise there. But yeah.
So okay, we'll get back to Arab governments, especially Gulf state governments, which are, as everybody knows, incredibly problematic when it comes to the Israel-Palestine issue. So last night, Beirut faced the most violent night of airstrikes. Here's footage. I'm not sure we have sound, but yes, it is significant. Fires, massive secondary explosions, potentially from ordnance. But I had someone come into my comments earlier, and say like that's because like civilian houses don't have massive secondary explosions. Like every house has a secondary explosion. We were talking about this.
Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, because everyone cooks with a friggin' propane tank.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have you ever seen a fire at a trailer park, man? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. So I basically just have made the observation that the violence of their airstrikes, and this is kind of a trend we've seen since I'd say November and the ground invasion of Gaza began, that when they experience any sort of tactical or operational failures, the violence of their airstrike completely escalates. And there's a lot of fog of war going on right now, especially along the border of Lebanon. But everything we hear and whispers is that it's not going well. So first of all, if you pay attention to Israeli Twitter, some of the cracks are beginning to show. Ahmad from Prop and Co. Sent me a number of like Israeli politicians saying essentially posting which they later deleted that the situation is not going well. I don't know how to describe it, but it is worse than we thought. And then Michael Schertzer, friend of the show, anti-Zionist Jewish activist, made this video about some of the news coming out of Israel right now about the Lebanon invasion. So
hey, whenever
the video starts with denial is not just a river in Egypt. He's responding to a comment which pertains to the Lebanon invasion.
Zionists say this, I'm always worried it's because they think that the Nile is a river that they have yet to colonize. Anyways, this is the context of the conversation. We were chatting about casualties in the ground invasion in Lebanon. Here is a series of tweets. You'll recognize this flag. It's the fascist flag. You support it. Anyways, here's one of your own explaining how y'all got wrecked. Over 300 confirmed dead and injured IOF soldiers sustained over the past 48 hours. Sustained means happened to you, by the way. In fact, y'all got mollywopped so hard, there were units who refused to obey orders to launch a counteroffensive, which has never happened in the 22 years of service. So anyways, get wrecked. You deserve it.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'll let say whatever you're going to say, and then I'm going to bring up an article that I found on Tehran Times.
What's that? Just do it.
Okay, so found an article on Tehran Times, which is the Iranian outlet. I know a lot of people are like, well, it's Iran. They spread propaganda. Not any more than we do. So I saw this article. I'm going to try to share this. I don't know if you guys can see this. Is it showing up?
No, because your internet sucks again. Oh, now we see it.
Okay. Hey, oh, yeah, because it's my internet always sucking. All right. Yeah. So Israel suffers heavy losses in southern Lebanon. It's a really interesting article. The resistance movement says it has inflicted significant and confirmed losses on Israeli special forces. Despite censorship efforts to downplay the losses and paint a picture of victories, back in Tel Aviv, a Hezbollah field commander has reported heavy casualties among the Israeli forces in the southern Lebanese border. The commander said in recent days, since the Israeli occupation military announced its ground invasion in southern Lebanon, we have counted over 25 officers and soldiers among the enemy's elite ranks killed, with more than 130 wounded. That's a lot. Now, as far as 300 casualties, I have no idea. But this article,
that's their own self-reporting, right? That was that tweet that he's referencing in the video was their own reporting, by their own counting, apparently.
Right.
A casualty rate of 300 in the couple days time.
If true, is significant.
Really effing high.
It's really
it
high
is high.
Period.
Israeli occupation forces attempted to infiltrate the direction of Kalat Shuaib in Blida village, but the resistance fighters targeted them with artillery shells, forcing them to retreat and causing confirmed injuries. By noon, the resistance fighters targeted a gathering of Israeli occupation soldiers in the settlement of Menara with a rocket barrage, hitting the target accurately. 5 minutes later, Hezbollah again targeted gatherings of Israeli soldiers in and around the settlement of Menara with a large rocket barrage, hitting the targets. Oh, that's it.
Okay.
So they did.
I'd say
that's true. That's insane.
Well, we also do multi-source reporting here. Like we're never going to know real numbers. Fog of war, active conflict zone. Hezbollah is not going to report their losses. The IDF is not going to report their losses. I don't trust Iranian state media, just like I don't trust Russian state media or Western legacy media. I don't trust freaking media, but we do have independent journalists on the ground. I eventually want to get the hello to my enemies guy on. So
you can generally trust states reporting on things that make themselves look bad, right? Like when DIA accidentally leaked the fact that the Israelis were using 55% plus unguided munitions, right?
Yeah,
that's one of those ones where like you can believe that because it makes them look bad, right? So for them to even say it, so the Israeli side potentially leaking that they have 300 casualties in their ground operations so far, to me is more reliable than anything else because they don't want that information to get out. But yeah.
Well, we pretty much all but confirmed that they lost an entire special operations commando squad in an H-bid, a house-borne IED. So, and that was at the first day, the real opening day of the invasion. We don't know if they were trying to clear it as a weapons cache or they're trying to set up like a patrol base inside the house. But we know it got X'd out. And that was the first mass casualty event that we heard about. And just so you guys know, an H-bid is a house-borne IED. It's basically like an IED, but you like booby trap the entire house and it like collapses the building and everything. It's what we call a platoon killer.
We also know that like if you were losing Merkavas to tandem RPGs, you 100% are going to lose Merkavas to anti-tank missiles, right? Entirely different school of anti-tank weapon, 10-kilometer range on those things, much higher yield, much more likelihood of a total crew kill, etc. So yeah, that I'm not surprised. Color me super shocked.
Okay, so now this is a local Lebanese journalist who's in the South and basically just trolls Zionists from the north of Israel. So eventually we want to get this guy on. We'll see his availability. But this is hello to my enemies, dude, Ali Mortada.
Hello, my enemies. May you have a very, very bad day.
Okay, so this is from today.
Update from the Lebanese front. Yesterday, a group of Israeli special forces, tried to blow up the city hall in Adaisi. They entered to Adaisi, and they carry a bomb with them to blow up the city hall. Hezbollah led
I think he's talking about demo charges. This is not the first time the Israelis have blown themselves up with demo charges.
That coffee sounds good, by the way. That little shot of coffee, a Lebanese coffee.
Oh, yeah, that does look like good.
I could use that right now.
Them enter to Adaisi, and when they come near to the city hall, they engage with them with heavy fire, and the bomb that they carry to blow up the city hall in Adaisi blow up in them, and they go to God between injured and dead. Until now, Hezbollah has killed 25 officers and soldier, has injured 100 soldier, more than 100 soldier, and after a 1 year of bombing and airstrike to all this area, this fighting area, and this area is destroyed after all this attack. Only Kfar Kila, you bombed Kfar Kila 600 times in the last year, and you couldn't go to Kfar Kila and to Adaisi. Also in Yarun and Marun and Aitarun, your army tried to go into Yarun, they got blown up. They got ambushed, and when a Merkava tank arrived to Jabal Blat near Marun, also the resistance blow it up.
So you have both Israeli military open source intel accounts reporting that they are repelled from the same town that independent journalists in South Lebanon are saying that they're repelled from. So we can pretty much go with that is probably what's happening. The invasion is stalling. It's not going well. Otherwise, we would hear Hebrew media talking about endless victory for IDF. Savages crushed beneath boot of civilization.
Yeah.
And I bring this up because Macron, the French president, a couple days ago said they're stopping arms shipments to Israel. And Benjamin Netanyahu had a hissy fit, like a frigging meltdown on camera using deeply colonial language.
Hold on. I want to hit on one thing that what's his name said real quick too. Besides that, we need to find out what his arm workout is. But
for real,
he mentioned that they bombed that town 6 times, 7 times, whatever he said there. They bombed it 6 or 7 times in the past, 100 days, and they still couldn't take it.
600.
600 times. Sorry. Yeah. But case in point, you cannot hold ground. You cannot take or hold ground with aerial bombardment. That does not work, right? So they're real good. They're real good at aerial bombardment, but you eventually have to go in and do some ground fighting, and that's where their capacity lack shows immediately.
My God, but I thought I was just going to be an IT guy in Tel Aviv, and like crap my pants in a K-hole in Ibiza on spring break. So yeah, it's basically not going well. And Benjamin Netanyahu, if you know what to look for, and you can read, like, he's a cool operator. He's like the Houdini of politics. He can get himself out of any bad situation and continue to survive. But he does look kind of worried now, and he's addressing the West and defaming President Macron, who this channel's not a fan of because he's an asshole. But he's nervous. He's nervous, and he's using deeply colonial language to appeal to a certain type of person.
Fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran. All civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side.
Dude, this is like straight out of like 1850s, like India British Raj. Like, it's insane that this kind of speech is happening right now.
Who's not?
Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Shame on them. Is Iran imposing an arms embargo on Hezbollah, on the Houthis, on Hamas, and on its other proxies? Of course not. The axis of terror stands together. But countries who supposedly oppose this terror axis call for an arms embargo on Israel. What a disgrace. Well, let me tell you this. Israel will win with or without their support.
I mean, just because you say it doesn't mean it's true.
But their shame will continue long after the war is won.
By not Israel.
For in defending ourselves against this barbarism, Israel is defending civilizations against those who seek to impose a dark age of fanaticism on all of us. Rest assured, Israel will fight until the battle is won, for our sake and for the sake of the peace and security of the entire world.
There's a lot to unpack in that speech. And I don't want to waste this episode on it because we got to talk about like Russia's role and their foreign policy platform in the Middle East. And we have to talk about like Israel potentially starting an entire regional war tonight. But did you guys see the movie Civil War?
Yeah.
Nick Offerman's character, the president, I forget what the factions were, but as the opposing army was closing in on the White House, he started giving these like press statements like, we just won a great victory. Some say it was the greatest victory in U.S. military history. And they were just getting fucking schwacked the entire time. Yeah. It's kind of giving those vibes, because we've seen political leaders do this before. Like when they're getting hit and they're losing badly and they're in a strategically untenable situation, they say these things.
That speech was specifically directed at Lindsey Graham. Yeah. That's what that speech was for. It was for nobody else because nobody else believes that shit. I don't even think his own population.
I can't believe Lindsey Graham got on a spot on Fox News to talk about like the fact that tens of thousands of people have lost their homes in North Carolina and still don't have power, and people don't have insulin anymore, and like and then tampons. And he's like, well, you know what's even worse than this? Israel's trying to defend itself. It's like, dude, why are you in office? It's embarrassing. So that's kind of what the speech reminded me of.
Poster boy for senatorial term limits is what he is.
Right. And so Israel's in a bad spot.
Israel's got some dirt on that guy. I don't know what they got, but they got some videotape of something for him to come out and just be blatantly anti-American and pro-Israel like that.
I've heard some pretty weird shit.
Yeah. So before we move on, Alina wanted to be on this show. If you don't know her, she's a regular contributor and analyst, but she couldn't make it. She's in Cyprus. Also, she was telling me that in Cyprus, Cypriot media is telling people to figure out shelter because they think like in the next couple days, you can start taking heat rounds because Hezbollah said that, if the war opens up, they will target UK and US bases in Cyprus because Cyprus is kind of like a little NATO aircraft carrier in the Eastern Mediterranean. So there is a concern that Cyprus will get hit if this conflict, the dimensions of this conflict expand. So she couldn't be with us, but we did want to say one thing about Gulf states and like Saudi talking points and the need to play down Hezbollah's effectiveness and the effectiveness of the axis of resistance in combating Israel from Gulf states that have historically been opposed to Iran. Like you do have the Saudi foreign minister saying this weekend that, you know, Iran and Saudi Arabia will have like good relations going forward. I'm like completely paraphrasing, but there's still, you have to understand that Saudi interests and Gulf interests are aligned with U.S. and Western interests. And I'm being really reductive here because they're kind of playing both sides, but they still want normalization with Israel. There's a lot of complicated security relationships between like Gulf states and Israel. Like Israel gives them a lot of spyware and technology, which they use on their own citizens. I spoke with Anthony Lowenstein, the journalist who wrote the Palestine Laboratory, about this at length on my Mint Press platform. It's like Israel's insurance policy. So there's a lot of security relationships going on. And then you find talking points like this. Now, Saheed Balsan.
There's also been a lot of U.S. pressure for those countries to normalize with Israel, right? The U.S. has been leaning on its allies in the Gulf states, you know, for decades to do that. So,
yeah. And so you have like Saheed Balsan, who's a commentator, analyst and he started Middle Nation, saying a lot of great things about like the West and how we're kind of like late stage finance capitalism, or like our institutions are degrading, Europe's dissolving, the rules based order is dissolving, and now he's like giving like MBS Saudi talking points to discredit what Iran's doing, and without endorsing like the way that government operates. This is a stark talking point. I was requested by Alina to address it before we get into the Iran section and comment on it, because we're seeing a lot of these talking points trying to inflame Sunni Shia tensions being propagated right now after the Iranian attack last Tuesday.
I mean, the fact of the matter is Hezbollah has killed many, many times more Lebanese and Syrian Sunnis than they have ever killed Israelis. This is just a fact. I mean, if we were to go by the body count, we would have to conclude that Hezbollah's main mission has been against Sunni Muslims, not against Zionists. You know, the government of Lebanon, by the way, has always, traditionally, historically, and now been much more aligned with Saudi Arabia and supported by Saudi Arabia and supported by the Gulf. Iran has not really invested much in Lebanon outside of Hezbollah. In fact, Iran has primarily only been investing in militancy across the region, not in infrastructure, not in hospitals, not in business and so forth. And that's been enough for them. That's been enough to make them useful until now.
All right, so no one's saying that the Syrian conflict wasn't freaking gnarly and that there aren't a lot of people in Syria that strongly loathe Hezbollah. But I just wanted to address this real quick. This is Alina writing. The reason I never advocated for this man's work is fundamentally because his ideological processing is rooted in religion. He has no real apprehension of how imperialism works because he is nothing more than a Sunni religious thinker at best. Therefore, as the Shia Muslims have shown themselves to be fighting against imperialism in the region, this enrages him deeply. That's what she thinks. As a result, he is in fact perpetuating Western imperialist disinformation about Hezbollah, which serves the imperial class in order to salvage his own religious class. Oh yeah, she's getting real Marxist right now. This in and of itself is a testament to his anti-imperialist aesthetic, which is no more than a facade to advance his own religious ideological agenda. I mean, that's just one guy. But I always, anytime someone brings up sectarian stuff, because I believe he's a Western.
Well, I ask the question, why now?
Yeah, why after?
So what you're saying, I've heard pieces of this before. I know Sunni Syrians who are absolutely no fans of Hezbollah, but my question is why make this statement now?
Why not?
As a ground fight opens up against somebody who's a way more egregious actor in the region, especially currently, right? Once actively conducting a genocide. So why now? That's what I would ask.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Mo Hamza, he's an activist here. I was texting him. He's like, "Yeah, I saw this video, and he's going off the rails with this bullshit, straight up corrupt Arab government speak. This should never be posted, and now he shouldn't be trusted at this point. He had completely valid videos, but many seem to be clickbaiting and or purposeful devil's advocate stances. Just to be clear, though, there are Lebanese people with this stance that blame Hezbollah for everything, including the attacks by Israel." But the stance is majorly flawed, and the majority back Hezbollah. I responded, "Oh, absolutely. People aren't a monolith. Besides, Israel is actively trying to rile those people up to cause internalized strife that would weaken Hezbollah. They aren't the only armed group in the area."
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also remember, Lebanon is a higher mix than most Arab countries as well, right? It's like a third Sunni, a third Shia, a third Christian, something loosely like that. Last time I heard about it, so it's even more complicated than a lot of places. Sorry, Mark.
Well, yeah. People need to understand the dynamics of Lebanon in regards to the sectarian religious groups. There's a lot of distrust. Like I was talking with Matt after we logged off that last episode we did with him about Maronite Christian community and their relationship with Hezbollah and other Muslim groups. There's a lot of distrust of a lot of deep scars between the Maronite, for example, the Maronite Christians and the Sunnis and the Shia, because of their perceived betrayal of Lebanese people when Israel was co-opting them by supplying arms. So that distrust is still there with the Lebanese people, and I think at least I've been perceiving that they've slowly been finding a solidarity, and there's been an awakening within Maronite Christian communities that they were just used as a tool by empire. But there's still some of them that see themselves as superior to Sunni and Shia factions, that Lebanon belongs to them. And that's just something that they're going to have to work out. And I feel like the key is kind of waking them up to the fact that the empire is not going to care what faction you are. It's only going to favor one or the other temporarily to create that division. And I think the key in Lebanese culture is to realize that, look, the empire might favor one of you guys just to create that division. It might use you, but at the end of the day,
it's what Western colonial powers have always done, especially like to basically prop up a marginalized group, make them the elite, make them rule over a significant portion of the rest of the population, and therefore make them completely dependent on Western support, money, political cover, and weapons.
Now, that being said, talking about how Saudi fits into this, Saudi Arabia, when I talk to anybody who's Palestinian or Lebanese or even Syrian, they always tell me that in the Arab world in general and in the Muslim world in general, there's a lot of distrust of Saudi Arabia, that there might be that they might in fact be investors in Israel's actions. Like publicly, of course, they have to say that we condemn Israel killing civilians, but privately, there's always the shit that goes under the table. And I personally believe that the Saudi government is invested in Israel's actions, that they're an actual black investor. They're a dark shadow investor in all this, because it would benefit them. It would benefit them if they eradicated Gaza and turned it into another Dubai as they want to do. And I guarantee you that the Saudis are the first ones in that boardroom throwing out money to do that investment. And that's the suspicion.
It's not just a suspicion. I mean,
it's confirmed, but I'm saying,
but hang on. I just want to say,
there's an existing security and business relationship. Me personally, I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're bankrolling genocide directly, but
not bank. Well, I don't know about bankrolling the genocide, but I'm definitely say that they're heavily invested in Israel succeeding in what they're doing.
All right, yeah, but it's not just Saudi Arabia; it's the Gulf states too. Like, I generally like Al Jazeera's reporting, and I was on Al Jazeera 3 times last week, and I got my segment kicked off because they cut my segment short, and I haven't heard back from them because I got called on to talk about the Iranian missile attack, and I was like, "Yeah, it was successful," and the anchor was like, "No, it wasn't successful. They were mostly intercepted." I was like, "Dude, we know that they put rounds on target onto their Air Force base," and he's just like, "Okay, Greg Stoker, former U.S. Army Ranger, geopolitical analyst at Mint Press News, end call," because it's a state media outlet, and the Qatari government doesn't want to give Iran any credit for anything it does. So, I mean, I was literally just kicked off of Al Jazeera just for saying what is objectively true, and came out a day later that they put multiple rounds on target on military sites. That was it. And therefore, the operation was successful. So, there's definitely a problematic relationship with the Gulf states, Israel, and their relationship with Iran. Now, there's another player in the region, not just the Gulf states, that we need to touch on before we go to this doomsday situation of Israel striking nuclear hard sites in Iran, and that is Russia. Russia's in Syria, and we know that Friday, depending on or Saturday or Thursday, depending on what time zone you're in, Russia had one of their ammunition depots in Syria hit by the IDF. That is still kind of unconfirmed, but we're pretty certain it did happen, or at least it impacted near a Russian depot. Now, we know Russians have military assets in Syria. They have air defense systems there to protect, the government and military sites, and they have troops on the ground, Wagner groups, which is a paramilitary appendage of the Russian state, has been in Syria for a hot minute. So what does Russia want from the Israel-Iran escalation? Chaos, good, perhaps? War, bad? I mean, that's kind of where I'm leaning towards. So, we have to realize that all these conflicts are connected. So Russia is dependent on Iran for military support in Ukraine. They're like Shahed drones, and they're building a drone factory, like the IRGCs in Russia, helping them construct and train on these drones, and they're building a drone factory there. So Russia is dependent on Iran for military support in Ukraine, but has complex ties with Hezbollah. So for Russia, the expanding war between Israel and its neighbors is also difficult on a strategic level. So backing up big picture, Russia's foreign policy under Putin, no matter how you feel about him, got a lot of mixed feelings about with our audience base, has revolved around this idea of a multipolar world. This is also central to China's foreign policy, which is an alternative to the unipolar world, which is generally seen by non-Western countries as the U.S.-led world order. So with heightened prospects of direct confrontation between Israel and Iran, and the war also expanding decisively into Lebanon. I mean, the Lebanon invasion is crumbling, Beirut's getting bombed, but what does this latest crisis mean for Russia's interests as a global power? So this is kind of more of a complex situation. I don't see how Russia would want war at all, but chaos its ability to expand its influence within the region is something that I'm going to see.
Every shell that has to be shipped to Israel is the shell that won't be shipped to Ukraine, for one.
That's every bomb.
That is a finite money pool. There's a finite amount of tolerance in the U.S. Congress to keep sending money to these conflicts. There's a growing Republican sentiment of we should stop sending money to all of these foreign things, right? They don't separate them. I've heard this recently from people I know, not people I agree with, but people I know, which is like, why are we sending money to Ukraine and Israel? Like they're tied together. Mm-hmm. Especially with the disaster in the southeast, or in Carolina. A lot of people are going, why are we sending billions to Ukraine and Israel? When we have a domestic disaster at home. So I don't know. I think Israel weakens. I think Israel's actions weaken Ukraine.
Yeah.
That's how
and so like Russia has received again significant Iranian assistance for its own invasion of Ukraine. This is how Al Jazeera's wording it, tying it to Tehran's interest in the region. So to quote an analyst from there, Russia has been closely cooperating with Iran for the past 2.5 years by exclusively in the military sphere. Iranian weapons are in great demand. They have never been in such demand, and Russia has become dependent on Iranian weapons. And again, I said IRGC instructors are in Russia, and they're helping to build a factory for the production of Shahed drones inside Russia. And as a result, Russia is forced to support Iran's allies in the Middle East, such as the Hezbollah movement. But of course, they've always had a complicated relationship with Hezbollah. So at this moment, I think they're still in Iran's orbit. They have to be involved in the region. They've always wanted more influence within the region, but I don't think Moscow is interested in a huge firestorm. So, like, I was reading some people on like social media and on the internet that like, oh, if Iran gets involved, then Russia's going to have to get involved. And yes, I don't see how that would happen, because we're talking about an escalation ladder to World War III, and everyone's asking me like, "What is World War III about to happen?" I was like, "Nah, I think we're still 90 seconds to midnight, dude. Like, there's so many things that would have to happen to get like another global power like Russia involved, because they're already fighting in Ukraine. What the hell are they going to do in Middle East?
Send what, how, right?
Yeah.
How are they going to power project there?
No, they already have a
signal ships and aircraft and stuff they've already lost in their current fight. Yeah, like with what? I just don't see it.
Well, one thing I feel like Russia is benefiting from conflict and escalation is that it kind of puts the resistance axis in favor of Russia, seeing them as like a future ally, a future hero. So thus making those resistance factions dependent on Russia and dependent for logistics. And but Russia has to play this walk a really fine line, because it doesn't want to appear to be alienating the Sunni population as well. By Russia supplying the Shia factions, it also does not want to piss off the Sunnis. It wants the Sunnis to look at them favorably as well.
You see the Americans, we're now, again, as Travis brought up, distracted by the war in Ukraine, and we need to spend a lot of time resolving this situation in the Middle East. They can't really power project into the region in terms of like a military force this time, but I don't think they want to see another regional war. And yeah, you said Russia and Iran share a mutual antagonism with the United States. They also share a common ally in Bashar Assad, and they intervened during the civil war, what people generally call the civil war. I know, but a number of Syrians who would have problems with that wording or that phrasing, where Russian warplanes bombed rebel-held cities while Hezbollah fought furiously on the ground. And they have strategic interests in Syria, including military bases as well as oil and gas depot. And Syria is like one of the most important like supply lines of intelligence and weapons throughout West Asia as well. So they're not going to leave. But I don't know. I'd say it's my view that among observers, there kind of exists a tacit understanding between Israel and Russia over Syria. And I don't think that's going to escalate at all. So I just wanted to touch on the Russia thing just a little bit in really broad terms about why they're not going to get involved in this strike that's going to happen. They're not going to do it because that's what people are talking about. And I was like, I don't see that happening.
No, I think that's why. I think it's highly unlikely. I don't think that makes any sense either.
Yeah. So now at the last segment, let's get to this. What this strike could look like, and just kind of our armchair generaling, like what the hell CENTCOM is thinking, because I've been talking about this for the last week. Is like the Iranian strike was effective, and it gave them Israel an off ramp to de-escalate, because they could just pump Hezbollah into overdrive and be like, see, because Yoav Gallant, the defense minister of Israel, said no damage happened on the Netanyahu base. I doubt it, but he said nothing happened. So they could put Hezbollah into overdrive and be like, we don't even need to respond. Look at these backwards Iranians. Like, you can't even like wipe their own ass.
Yeah, and I mean they're gonna, and it would have been like the last time this happened, right? They're gonna send a large volley and then do nothing for a long period of time again, potentially.
Yeah,
unless you goad them into it or force their hand.
So they have an off ramp, but apparently they're going forward with it. And the United States really doesn't want a war with Iran. I mean, aside from like neocons like Graham and Rubio and Mike Pompeo.
Israel obviously wants it, right? They want that. They want Iran to keep striking them so that the US has to actively engage. They want that.
Yeah, and Iran also doesn't want a war with the United States. Their economy's been in a slump for a long time. They're on an upswing. having United States bombers destroy their oil infrastructure and bomb their financial centers will be bad. Our military assets in the region don't have enough air defense to protect them from Iranian reprisals, especially if they concentrate fire. Our oil assets are like completely vulnerable in the region too. They could shut down the Strait of Hormuz. If you don't like gas prices now, you probably won't like them after that happens, especially like a month, like 6 weeks or whatever before an election season. It's just a stupid move. And I don't know really what's to gain from it. Like nobody wants it. Iran wants a better nuclear deal. They want a better relationship with the United States to relieve economic sanctions. And here we are with the head of Central Command coming to Israel to plan a joint strike. Like, Travis, what do you think that could possibly accomplish?
I think that accomplishes nothing good. Nothing good for this, specifically United States side. I don't see any advantage to that escalation. I think we should be cutting sling load personally. With one of what is to me is very obviously one of the worst allies the U.S. has ever had. So I don't think continuing to participate in sunk cost fallacies makes any fucking sense. What it could look like, I mean, there's a significant strike package in the Mediterranean, right? For those 4 destroyers alone, and that's a piece of a larger carrier group. So, unlike Russia, the U.S. can power project at will relatively easily, pretty much anywhere, from packages from small things all the way up to large scale strikes. So it's pretty hard to guess. You would hope that it would be like limited or focused on, but then even then it's like focused on what? On mobile launch batteries. A lot of the Iranian stuff is underground, but a lot of it's also heavily mobile launch systems, right? So what exactly do you target? Yeah, I don't know how you de-escalate anything doing that. You're not deterring somebody who stopped shooting, right? They're not actively firing. And also, they will do it again. They will fire again if you do this. Like they're going to have to, right?
That was only a tiny fraction of their arsenal of over 1.5 to 2 million ballistic missiles. They shot 180 and already got rounds on target through Israel's air defense system. So it doesn't. The question though is
it known that the target is Iran?
Yeah.
That's against Iranian, or does that include Iranian-backed factions?
Well, I mean, that's what's being circulated in Hebrew media. So they usually have connections to the state, and they usually tease what they're going to do first. And the head of CENTCOM landed there. Seems like shit's going to go down. And the main talk is that they are going to target Iranian nuclear sites. Well, there's quite a few of them, and they're really underground, not like
I was about to say
feet underground. They're like,
by the way, Trump shattered his whole anti-war perception when he said that Israel should target. So that to me was one of the biggest headlines. Is Trump just shattered the whole idea that he's a non-interventionist and he's America first or he's anti-war. He just straight up told Israel to. He sounded like Lindsey Graham. He's now Lindsey Graham, and that's insane.
I have a very, very hard time believing that anyone in CENTCOM is encouraging Israel to hit a nuclear site. I just I find that wildly unlikely. I just don't believe.
Can we go back to the underground part? You said they're underground. Can we dive into that a little more about a strike on a nuclear site? What would be the target? What would be the intended damage?
Well, first of all, you'd have to have a significant ground penetration to actually do any damage to it.
Do we have anything like that for something that far underground for a nuclear site, which is obviously reinforced by?
I mean, we've got the 30 to 50,000 pound Moabs that we used on caves in Afghanistan, but then again, Israel doesn't have those, so we'd have to give it to them, which would be kind of a crazy escalation.
And Moabs can be easily intercepted, by the way. Because they're fat, like giant.
Well, they're bombs. They're not.
Yeah, I know. They could be easily something that would have to carry a Moab could be easily intercepted. You can't shoot a Moab with an F-22. That has to. What's the delivery platform for something like that? The Moab.
Well, they probably do it with a stealth bomber if they're going to deploy it.
I don't think that can fit on a stealth bomber. The Moab is huge. I believe they had to. The Moab. What's the main platform they deliver the Moabs from? The aircraft. It's not a stealth bomber. They can't deliver a Moab.
Oh no, it's parachute delivered out of a C-130.
I've had a C-130. A C-130 is
they
what
literally
the fuck? You gotta put a fucking Moab on an
F-22
F-22 Raptor. That thing's gonna Moab is bigger than the F-22 Raptor.
No, I mean, one, those sites are extremely hardened, so you'd have to hit them repeatedly with a lot of ground penetration.
And you're not going to get there. You're not even going to get to the target.
You could eventually.
C-130 is not going to infiltrate. A C-130 is not going to infiltrate Iranian.
Yeah,
airspace.
that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
So
I don't. That's why
we use the Moab in Afghanistan, where we completely own the airspace, right?
Yeah,
different animal. But yeah, and again, I just don't buy it. I don't buy CENTCOM helping to target a nuclear site. That doesn't track.
So Travis, are they going to take the Lindsey Graham route and target the oil refineries? Is that the intention?
I don't think you can. I don't think you see the CENTCOM helping target anything that's going to cause an ecological disaster. I think you can see them targeting things like they targeted in Yemen, which they're radar sites, launch sites, C2 sites. That's the only.
What about just military?
If they're doing that, which I think is stupid. Which I think is fucking stupid. If it's true, they should not be doing that. But if they did, your targets would be the normal, the quote unquote normal target package for deterrence type stuff like that. It's going to be to degrade their capability to continue to target long range fires, right? So it's going to be
I would say that too,
radar,
like radar sites,
C2 radar, potentially launch sites, but again, a lot of those are dug in and they're also mobile, so they're that's pretty hard to knock those out.
So, also, the IRGC has officially put out a statement that said, I can pull it up here in a second. I didn't have it prepared, but they said essentially, if you target our oil refineries, we're going to target yours. So, like, that's a lose-lose.
Yeah, I just don't see a refinery being an actual target. Not from CENTCOM. Israel, sure.
Israel, 100% Israel.
I believe that. I don't believe a U.S. advisor at that level is sitting there going, yeah, what you should totally do? You should hit a refinery. Like I don't buy it.
So they're going to go with the Dahia doctrine.
One sec. We're not being apologists for like United States interventionism overseas.
No, I mean, the practical targeting. That's not a practical target, really. Yeah, it's not. It's not. Even if you look at previous U.S. behaviors, previous NATO behaviors, that's actually not something they target. Right? Oil infrastructure is typically not. It's usually not targeted.
Part of the reason is we won't sit.
Yeah, if you want to be able to pump shit out of there, it's good to not blow up all the infrastructure. So yeah, that's not usually what's targeted.
Yeah. Also, again, without being apologists for like U.S. targeting practices, it's just we've been.
We're not being apologists. Just being realists. Like that's how those targeting meetings are going. That's how those targeting cycles.
Okay, yeah, you were on division staff, and I was like involved in the kinetic strike targeting process, and that's just not, in my experience, how that goes down at all.
No, there's also a large amount of illegality there, by the way, because an oil refinery is civilian infrastructure. It's not a military target, so that's wildly problematic on its face.
Yeah. We're missing. We're like missing out one element of this that I feel like we're being naive about. Who really drives U.S. military policy overseas? Who drives it? It's big corporations, energy companies, right? And I was just thinking about this as you guys were talking. If they did target oil refineries, what does that do? It drives oil prices up. Who does that benefit? It benefits American oil companies.
Usually, though, I will say recently, Mark, if you look at recent reporting and the price movements, normally any kind of Middle East conflict should have caused a fuel price spike by now. And there's been some commentary from NPR and others that it's not happening. The system
this
is
one
way less,
actually.
It's way less sensitive to like a single regional interruption than it used to be.
Understood, but an actual attack on an oil refinery would actually affect the supply. And what does that do? It better legitimizes attempts of American supremacy with our oil supplies and our oil reserves. with the whole fracking thing. Kamala Harris coming out says that she's pro-fracking, Trump pro-fracking. So what that does is oil prices go up. American politicians say, "Hey, we need to frack." We now dominate. The market with our oil supply. We have more oil than Saudi Arabia. The United States does, by the way. We have officially have more oil reserves than anywhere else on this planet.
Maybe, but a fuel price spike is categorically bad for the administration in charge. So I don't believe that the administration in charge is cooperating on any plan or policy that would.
Well, the administration in charge is going out the door soon. So yeah, I don't think they give a fuck. I mean, I really think that the big companies are calling the shots here, not the administration. Anyways, that's just my whatever.
I would say that it's not this. Like when we say things like, yes, capitalism determines U.S. foreign policy, it's not like the head of ExxonMobil is calling up CENTCOM or calling up a politician.
No, it's the head of BlackRock. No, it's the head of BlackRock calling CENTCOM.
These situations aren't like a call and response, though. There are certain interests that align, that they're able to, hire lobbyists and influence overarching policy. But it's not like, okay, well,
that's an interest that aligns. I say it's an interest that aligns because if they attack Iranian oil supplies, now it puts U.S. based oil companies as the front runners for oil supply, and now the world is dependent on them, and that kind of maybe that's kind of like a way of countering the BRICS thing, Just saying, I don't know. It's just all hypothetical, anyways.
Okay, well. Either way, I don't see refineries or nuclear sites getting targeted. Going, off of what you said, C2 nodes, radar stations. Basically, the intent of the strike, I guess, would be to reestablish deterrence against Iran to never attack Israel. But unless you cause massive damage, that's not going to happen. They got a lot of goodwill.
Well, and to qualify that, what we were saying is, if CENTCOM is involved in the targeting, I do not believe that nuclear sites or oil infrastructure would be targeted. I don't think CENTCOM is encouraging or helping to plan that. Right? If Israel acting by themselves, what they would hit, they've hit nuclear sites before. So
that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that Israel acts independently of CENTCOM. Like Israel does this thing where it attacks a oil refinery or a nuclear site, and it's like, oops. And America's like, we didn't tell them to do that. They just did it. I'm sorry. We're doing our own thing, and Israel's doing its own thing over here. They could separate themselves from that.
Okay, yeah, but here's my thing, and maybe perhaps I'm still like naive as hell. How they're fighting in action in Gaza. They're expanding operations in northern Gaza right now. They've got a multi-brigade action happening in West Bank, and they have a crumbling front in the north. They're low on ammunition. They're low on men. Like, why would they actually do anything?
Because Greg, it's not that you're naive.
Well, hey, let me finish. Let me finish. Why would they actually do anything? Like they don't have the capacity to open up another front with Iran and its proxies throughout the region. Also, and I want to finish.
But they're already fighting their proxies, though.
What?
They're already fighting their proxies, though. So yeah, what front would it be?
Well, first of all, the proxies, the militias in Iraq would open up in a whole new way. They've said categorically that if Israel responds to the Iran and bombs Iran, then they're going to attack sustained attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq. So that's one consideration we have to take into account. And then a war between Israel and Iran will not be like ground troops fighting ground troops. It'll be salvo against salvo because they're not contiguous, and they're not going to.
Well, Iran's not. I think that's the point. I think that's what I was hitting at with that question, Greg, is because yes, while they're fighting multiple brigade eating actions in and around occupied areas in southern Lebanon, they do not appear to have had their ability to carry out aerial strikes degraded at all. They're still able to do that at a high frequency consistently. So I don't think that's an issue for them. They can play airstrike all day long.
I got a question.
As long as the U.S. keeps shipping them stuff to drop, they can keep dropping. So,
all right, what's up?
Well, Greg, I don't think that you're naive. I think you're just thinking too logical. What has been the pattern on this podcast is you and Travis think as logical military strategists. Since when has Israel been following your pattern of logic? It has not. So we have broken that ruse a long time ago. It's time for us to kind of like adapt our thinking process concerning Israel military strategy, because they have broken every rule that we have aligned out on this podcast. Now, as far as airstrikes, what Trav brought up that their airstrike capability has not been degraded. And that's a great topic to kind of cover for at least a little bit. And we need to dive more into it. What would it take to degrade Israel's airstrike capacity? They attacked the Nevarim base, but where is Israel? Is it possible that Iran could do a coordinated attack on all of their Air Force bases and all the places that they're parking their F-22s and F-35s? And does Israel have an underground base, kind of like where China does in the desert, where the aircraft actually take off on a runway that's kind of dug in, like deep underground, reinforced by concrete, and then it shoots out of like a narrow opening like China has? Do they have that? I mean, so what would it take to degrade their Air Force capabilities?
Well, a lot of their jets are out in the open, just like the United States has, open air staging grounds on our own Air Force bases. If they really took out a fleet of F-35s that were sitting on a tarmac, that would literally cause people to have a conniption. And I feel like there's certain people in the United States that would feel like they would have to respond to that. So I don't know. When it comes to shooting down an F-35, I don't see how. It's never been done. I don't think.
No, it's borderline impossible. Yeah, you have to have another F-35.
No, not shooting it down. I'm not talking about shooting it down.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. Their ability.
I'm talking about attacking their inventory.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to hit them all at once. You're going to have to saturate. It's what's been talked about several times in the air defense in the air defense fight, right? You have to saturate a specific zone so that it's air defense in depth fails, right? Or the systems can't reload fast enough, et cetera. You've got to overwhelm the air defense and hit. And they did successfully hit ground targets. Like anyone who's pretending that didn't happen didn't watch the videos that we watched. But yeah, like to hit like all of them simultaneously. No, I think that'd be pretty damn difficult.
Well, what would it take to hit them all simultaneously? Think about it. You only have a finite number of U.S. Or Israeli Air Force bases that can deploy.
The problem with the munitions being fired is you can see them coming too. So to a certain extent, right? Like they said they were firing hypersonics. That may be true, but you're never gonna pull off operations of that scale without some kind of early warning happening via either U.S. intel satellites watching your.
So what's the protocol? What's the protocol when they?
I don't know, man. I'm not in the Air Force, brother. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, it's like if they know that that rockets and missiles are coming in from Iran to attack Israeli Air Force,
you can move them. You can fly them and land them in.
You got to move them real quick, right?
NATO. You can fly them and land them on NATO bases.
In Cyprus,
gotcha. So
which is why
they'll get the pilots in the jets and then fly off. Got it. I just was curious about that.
No, I mean that'd be my guess. I do not know.
Yeah. So bottom line is, I don't see it coming to that. This response. I mean, yes, Mark brought up the point that would be completely illogical. I think Israel should just do a performative strike. Iran has taken hits, and exercised restraint and patience. And if Israel, in conjunction with CENTCOM planning, does something judicious where Iran, really doesn't have to respond, but they can save face, that would be nice. I don't see the nuclear sites happening, the oil refineries happening. It's just going to be military infrastructure, and Doomsday Clock still at 90 minutes, and the Lebanon front is absolutely collapsing. I'm wondering now that we're going to end on that, because at least we seem to agree on that's the state of play for the Israeli strikes, which could happen in like the next couple hours, because it is nightfall over there. It's 8:00 at night, so that's when they're going to start prepping their bombing operations if they're going to have them. So this episode could get outdated real quick, but how long? This is just a betting pool, and you can do this in the comments section. I just want to end on this. How long do you think this Lebanon operation they're going to keep going with this? Taking bets. No one.
Oh, I didn't. You want us to skew the results right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, say the question again.
I think that requires a deeper view into the Israeli domestic political situation than I have, because I think they can sustain it as long as they can sustain the casualties, which I don't think is very long. I don't think there's a high tolerance for the kind of body count that's coming out of southern Lebanon. So my guess is short.
And so yeah, but like they can't afford to back down though. That's the real crux of this Lebanon thing. Because like, what happens if they aren't able to establish their buffer zone and they halt operations? Like they'd have to accept some sort of ceasefire, which would be on terms that are embarrassing to them. Like I think they're just going to keep it going because they can't.
They got to keep it going to keep that fanatical momentum within Israeli society going. Like they're invincible.
Yeah, but you're not going to get momentum. You're not going to get a positive momentum bump from 100 to 300 casualties per 1 week period casualty counts. That's going to end your war effort real fucking quick.
And what people don't understand is that, like, when we say casualties, like 130 that are like killed or injured, you also have to think about the trauma of all the people who are connected to those soldiers. For one soldier, we're talking about at least 30 people in his life, family members, friends, who are now aware that their loved one is dead, and therefore that reverberation just, it sends shockwaves in Israeli society. So, and then of course the soldiers who are in the immediate area, vicinity, where their fellow soldiers were killed or injured.
Yeah, they're not Russians, right? They're not Russians. They can't ship in 2,000 guys from some very obscure part of the territory, bring them in, get them all killed, and then bury them in a mass grave somewhere and deny that they ever existed. Like you're not going to get away with that.
Yeah, you can't. No.
Also, it's not like a large country like America where like thousands of Americans died, but they're not like from the same generally.
1/100th of 1% of one state. Yeah, exactly.
Spread across a country the size that's bigger than the Indian subcontinent. So like Israel's a tiny country, and it's going to be hard to keep this domestic situation contained. It's going to be hard to keep how poorly the border war is going contained, and we're hearing unconfirmed reports of people denying orders.
Yeah, I nailed it. If the discipline issue, if that is true, that is a very fucking serious discipline problem. You are not going to be able to sustain it,
because Israelis are not battle hardened soldiers. They're not battle hardened. They also might not be drinking Starbucks in Tel Aviv.
They might not be morons either, right? Like
they might not be. They might not be complete idiots.
They still want their party life, dude. They still want to go.
If you want to send me against, pre-dug Hezbollah anti-tank positions, I'm going to tell you to go fuck yourself too. It's dumb.
Yeah, especially when I have an other option.
Yeah.
So that's the situation. I guess it's a nice Sunday talk. I don't think World War III is happening yet. Again, we have a couple more rungs on the escalation ladder. We got 90 seconds left on the Doomsday Clock. So you can enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'm excited for Halloween. I think we will still exist for Halloween, which is a win. So, hey, hell yeah. I do anticipate. Yeah, I do anticipate an Israeli response in the next couple days, though. Hopefully they grow some sense and don't. But not going to hold my breath on that. And on that note, guys.
On that note, hold on. 19-year-old Hassan Hamad. Hold on.
You're like the kid in class who we're about to get released.
I'm like the guy who likes
I have a question.
19-year-old Hassan Hamad was a journalist. He was killed by a Jabalia camp, and he was warned by an Israeli officer apparently 5 days before that happened that he needs to stop reporting on the atrocities in Gaza or he'll take it. So he took a missile, he died. So rest in power to him. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah, they're also Hassan Hamad. Oh, I've seen that all over social media today.
Yeah.
They are expanding operations in Gaza again, in North Gaza. For what purpose?
Oh, I thought
they blew up a mosque that killed 24.
I thought they cleared it like 5 different times.
This is the third. Yeah, this is the third. This is the third.
Oh, this is the third.
Invasion up there. Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah. So basically, it's fuck. Well, it's all bullshit. They're not gonna succeed, and yeah, and in the long and storied tradition of settler colonial projects, they will double down on violence and force, and when that doesn't work, they'll triple down on violence and force, and it will eventually just completely implode. So that's what we're looking at right now. How long is it going to take? Probably longer than you want it to, because the most powerful empire in human history is backing them to the hilt. So we'll see you probably next Tuesday. Hope to do like a different, more like historical episode if the news cycle isn't crazy. And we hope to see you then. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one here at Colonial Outcasts. Cheers, y'all.
Peace.